want to thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Edge of the Earth podcast. We're going to do something a little bit different this week. It's just going to be me talking, and we're going to try to cover the meaning of life. And I'm not some crazy, guy who's going to try and tell you, oh, the meaning of life is exactly this, or it's exactly that, and the spirits have told me from a higher realm, or anything like that. I just want to talk about what I think the meaning of life is, and what happens after that life ends. So again, all the places that this podcast can be found are on Spreaker.com. You can find us on iTunes, you can find us on SoundCloud, and you can find us on Stitcher, as well as YouTube, and maybe iHeartRadio, so we'll find out. So let's start by talking about what makes life meaningful, or what is the purpose of life. What do we need to do to have a successful experience here on Earth? So when you're born, you're kind of taught all these different things and how to be and how to act around people and what you need to do in society to further your life. Basically, you have to go to school, you have to get a job, maybe further your education. Depends on what you want to do, really. But these things are required of you to even exist, really, and for you to have enough money to function. So then you do that, and then eventually, you get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Eventually you get married, then you have children, and maybe at this point you're rising further in your job, and then things start to go away. Maybe your parents have passed away. Maybe you've lost siblings. Maybe your kids have left you. What happens after this point? What makes life meaningful? Let's take, for example, a lady who would be the crazy cat lady definition, or she lives in one tiny little house her entire life and never goes anywhere, never really sees anything. The only spectrum of life that she experiences is maybe she works for a little while, maybe she doesn't go anywhere and she ends up on some kind of Social Security, some kind of financial assistance, and she has all of her friends and family around her, and she can see them anytime she wants, visit them all the time, but she never sees anything outside of that. But then you've got this person over here who travels the world. Somehow they might have enough funding to go wherever they want. They get to see Europe. They're from the United States, obviously, let's say that. They get to see Europe, maybe Canada, maybe visit the coast of Mexico. You get to go to Ireland, Japan. I mean, you see all these different places. You're not home, and you're not spending all of your time around your family members. But which life ends up being more meaningful? Which life is better? Which is more accomplished? Or maybe you need to have some kind of delicate balance between the two. Because is it the relationships that you have with other people that make a life, or is it experiencing everything that the world has to offer and seeing these different cultures and seeing this different landscape and, gazing out across the ocean, seeing the tallest mountain, looking down off the mountains? What is it exactly that you need to do? Because I know that relationships are important, but also you have to think that, you're born alone and ultimately you will die alone. So when you become a parent, it's not just about you anymore. You have to take care of your children, and you have to guide them and, raise them. Maybe that's part of the meaning of life, but I don't think that's all there is. Because if that's the meaning of life, is having children and raising them, and then their meaning of life will be raising children and having them, that doesn't really seem like any sort of existence. That seems like a cattle type thing, that cattle are bred to be eaten. They're bred to live and then die and repopulate themselves. So maybe it's a delicate balance. And so on the drive home, I was listening to The Wonder Years, and the song is called A Song for Patsy Cline. And it's talking about how Patsy Cline, before she died, knew that she was going to die. She had this impending sense of doom. If you don't know who Patsy Cline was, she was a really famous country singer, and she used to perform at the Grand Ole Opry a lot, and she sold out all the time. But anyway, for a few weeks, she had this impending sense of doom. She knew that something was wrong, and she had had 2 bad accidents prior to this, 2 bad car accidents. So she actually had started giving away her possessions to her friends and family, and she'd even written a will on an airplane, I think. I can't remember for sure if I'm getting that part right, but she wrote a will very recently, and then she ended up trying to get home to Nashville, and they were talking about taking a plane despite the weather being bad, and one of the people she was with insisted that they take the plane, and they had already gotten pretty close, so they were going to brave the weather and go anyway, and well, the plane didn't make it. They pretty much nosedived into a forest outside of Nashville, and the coroner said they were all killed instantly. Patsy's sense of doom was correct, after all. And she said that, if it was her time, then it was her time. And she was a very religious person, from what I gather. And so maybe she had accepted it. Could you do that? Because I'm not sure that I'm ready to do something like that. I'm not. Some days I can mentally ready myself, in a sense, to accept that this is what's going to happen, to accept that there could be one day that I close my eyes and I don't open them again. Maybe you die in your sleep. Is that the best way to go? I mean, it might be. I've heard of people who had dreams that they were dying, and it turned out they were actually dying. And someone, people with like sleep apnea or something like that, they'll be woken up and it'll be just in time to save their life, or they'll be in the hospital and that's happening, and they manage to save them right before. So even in your dreams, I think that your brain can tell you in a way that you're dying. And then there are other days where I'm not ready to go at all, and I would say those are most days. I feel like I have a lot of fight in me. I don't know if that actually matters or not when it comes down to it. I mean, your body can only do so much. Your organs are just your organs, There's no amount of muscle in your arms or legs that's going to save you. So I really go back and forth, and I hope that it's not anytime soon. I'm just going to really lightly touch on this because there's some things I'm going to talk about and some things I won't. We're already just about halfway through this episode. So I was raised in a religious home, just recently left the faith, if you will, about a year ago, I guess now. And once you take off the God glasses, as you could say, and see the world in a much different perspective, things make more sense and less sense at the same time. But it also affects your outlook on life, and it affects your outlook on death. And being a paranormal researcher like I am, and like this podcast is about, that's why I pursue ghosts so heavily, is because they are the one true answer to whether or not there is life after death. And I still believe that there is life after death, based on a number of reasons, but still there are a lot of people who are atheists, and they accept the fact that they will die and they just don't exist anymore. They don't believe in ghosts or anything like that. They've never probably had an experience with one, but they are willing to accept that it's just nothing after that. And I know there are some people like Mark Twain famously said that, he was dead for millions of years without ever knowing it or caring. And so therefore he's not really afraid to die because he's not going to know or care after that. And I wish I could have that same outlook, and I almost could, but I feel like there are so many things that I would like to do, and because of, not making enough money or having enough monetary gain in this life, I won't be able to do those. And I don't know if I'll ever truly get everything there is to get out of life. And I'm not sure how to feel about that, because there are a lot of people who don't. There are kids who die all the time. There are people who are totally content to live and die in one spot, as long as they have their family around them or whoever. They like the area, maybe. And so maybe the meaning of life is only for that one person. It's an individual thing. It's different for everyone. Maybe there is no true meaning of life. Maybe it's a personal thing with yourself. And people of faith, they have their faith, and they've had that ingrained in them for years. And once it gets to a certain point, you can't, they're set in it, they've committed. And so it's almost like when you have faith, you're living this life with the impression that you're going to have another life after that. So I don't know if you can truly get everything there is to get out of this life if you're just kind of prepping for the second life. I mean, maybe you can. I'm sure you can, actually. I guess I shouldn't say that, because you can still, it is a personal thing. So, I mean, I don't know. There's just so many things. It's not an easy subject, and I was listening to the podcast last week, the Thinking Atheist podcast. It's a very popular show, and it was instrumental in kind of enlightening me to the truth about a lot of the things in the Bible and how so much of it isn't accurate and it's contradictory, and we don't know who wrote the Bible in the first place. None of the authors have been proved authentic, and everything is just contradictory. I mean, I can't get into it right now, but there are just so many reasons. All you have to do in my opinion, if you just study the Bible, you would realize that it's not what you think it is. And so then if you have accepted that it's not the answer that we thought it was, then you have to face the realization of something else. Like I said, I was listening to this podcast, and they had an episode where it was just taking listener calls, and they were just talking about pretty much whatever they wanted to talk about. And one of the people who called in was a woman who said that her husband had committed suicide. And they were both in their 40s, and she always thought that she was the one who was kind of messed up. And so nobody really expected this out of the husband. And she has to deal with the realization for her that she's never going to see her husband again. Ever. If there is no afterlife, if there is no other dimension, other realm of existence, she's never going to see him again. And she has to live with that for the rest of her life. And then she has to deal with her in-laws telling her that it's okay because she'll see him one day again in heaven. But then according to their religion, he killed himself. He's not going to heaven. That's supposed to be the one-way ticket down below to this hell that is only mentioned 7 times in the Bible and is quite contradictory and doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form. But I'm not going to get into that. One of these days I am, though, and I'm going to rip it to shreds. This is something I'm very passionate about, and I feel like I've been tricked and lied to, and it's not by the people who raised me. It's not by the churches intentionally. They've all been tricked. I didn't get smarter when I became an atheist. An atheist is such a scary word, isn't it? I mean, it just sounds bad. All I did was I started asking questions, and I didn't stop asking questions. And eventually they ran out of answers, and the book ran out of answers. In fact, the book is what gave me the questions in the first place. So this is something that I have to ponder for the remainder of my time here. Looking out the window right now, it's stormy, and I'm in Tornado Alley. There could be a tornado drop down and blow me away right now. I wonder what my life would have meant you know? It really cracks me up when people, they have tornadoes in Oklahoma, kills 7 people, 3 of them, 4 of them, maybe children, either drowned to death, trapped in a building, or were killed violently. But there were some crosses on the side of the highway that were still standing. Or there's a Bible that showed up on top of somebody's hood of their truck. And they say, oh, it's a miracle. God did this, and he's showing us that he still cares. What about those 3 or 4 children who died horribly? What did their life mean? This is a really personal podcast, and I'm sorry if it seems a bit depressing, but I feel like these are things that we need to ponder, and we need to not brush it under the rug. It is good to have fun and enjoy your life and enjoy the little things. But there is a really big thing that I think about all the time. And I look into the sky, and I think about the fact that we're standing on a rock that's hurtling through space right now. And all these other billions of planets, trillions of planets, are out there. And there are so many bigger things than this. And I want to experience it all, but I just can't. So maybe that's the sad limitation of human life. But I do know that one day a lot of humans will be able to experience that, and they will have a much greater understanding of the universe. But, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but I do consider myself a dreamer. And I like to dream of things much larger than this. That's why I play video games, for example. I mean, it takes you into another world where you can do almost anything that you want to. You don't have to worry about death. You don't have to worry about being scared of something. But in the real world, I'm going to continue to deal with my responsibilities at work and at home. I'm going to try to be a better person. And I'm not having any family issues. Let me just clear that up. I'm just saying I want to get everything I can get out of life before I die in a car crash, or I die at 94. So many people die in hospitals, and I used to be okay with that. Give me some medicine, help me feel good, let me go out peacefully. But now I almost feel like I want my last moments to be awake, not asleep, awake, like laying in the grass, flat on my back, just staring up at the sky, watching the clouds roll by slowly, or at night, watching the stars. Just dreaming of that bigger universe out there. Thank you all for listening. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Until next time, I'll see you again at the edge of the earth.